If the Commission finds that awards should include working from home rights, several million other workers on their enterprise agreements could also push for the same flexibility. Jessica Tinsley is the Industrial Director of Workplace Relations at the Chamber of Commerce, and Melissa Wilson is a Senior Economist at the Committee for Economic Development Australia, an independent think tank. I welcome both of you. Melissa, starting with you, I mean, how significant has remote working become in recent years? What are the figures telling us?
Yeah, hi, thanks for having me. And you're right, it's been a massive increase in work from home since the beginning of the pandemic. So what we know from the data is that currently 37% of Australians regularly work from home. And if you look back to census figures pre-pandemic, that number was more like 5% were working from home on census night. So it's been a really dramatic shift in a really short space of time.
Jessica Tinsley, I mean, you're hearing lots of different feedback from companies about the impact this shift has had. Tell me about it. What are you hearing, the diversity of these sorts of views?
Well, thanks for having me, Andy. I think in terms of what we're hearing on the ground is that when employers can offer flexible working arrangements, particularly working from home, we're hearing that they're doing that. But the reality is a lot of the businesses out there just can't offer that. So there's lots of different industries such as retail, manufacturing, where working from home is just not an option. But where we've got businesses that can, we find that they do. And look, that's not necessarily a bad thing. There are some concerns from the business community around the extremes, really, around employees that are refusing to come back to the office at all. And that's becoming increasingly an issue with our tight labour market, where really it's the world of the employee at the moment. But I think as that our labour market kind of loosens a little bit, we might start to see a bit of a shift in that trend.
Of course, productivity is always the first, debate when we're talking about working from home. As this text says, being working from home one day a week for 25 years, I kept this right by being measured on outcomes, not how long I'm in the office. Melissa, do we have a sense on what this shift to remote work has done in terms of workplace productivity? What's the definitive answer there?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of views and opinions and it can get quite confusing. We know that, like you've already touched on, there is this discrepancy between the productivity gains that accrue to workers. So workers typically like and feel more productive when they work at home. They enjoy that flexibility, not having to commute. Whereas the productivity benefits of getting people together at their workplace in the office, they typically accrue at the firm level, and those benefits are less tangible for workers and they take longer to accrue. So that's, the benefits from things like collaboration and informal mentoring and so forth. When we look at the overall evidence on productivity in terms of work from home so far, it depends on a range of factors. And so you really need good research and good evidence to back this up. And so far, the evidence suggests that some form of hybrid is likely to be the best approach. So, not the two extremes, a little bit of time at work and a little bit of time at home. And that if you can get this done if you can really crack this for your organisation, that you can get some productivity gains from that.
Yeah, the whole concept of presenteeism, I don't know how prevalent it was in the debates about productivity before the pandemic, but I certainly think I do my best work in Ugg boots and tracky dacks, but, my boss might feel differently. If you just join me on RN Drive, it's 4:22. Jessica Tinsley is the Industry Director of Workplace Relations at the Chamber of Commerce. Melissa Wilson, a Senior Economist at independent think tank CEDA. Tell me, Melissa, we've looked at the benefits of remote working for people with disabilities and carers in particular. This is the subject of your inquiry. It seems like this is one area where working from home absolutely has its benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the area, diversity and inclusion, where we've seen a really clear win from working from home. So our research has found that more parents, women with young children in particular, and more people with a disability or a health condition and more carers have joined the workforce thanks to that pandemic-induced shift to work from home and also the strong labour market over the last few years as well. So we've seen really strong gains for women with young children, and now their participation is up 8.5 percentage points, and people with a disability or a health condition similarly up 7.5 percentage points. These are really big gains when you think that participation across the workforce more broadly was steady or only up a little bit over that time. And what we're also seeing is that these groups who had a stronger preference for work from home prior to the pandemic they've increased their rates of work from home, but so has everybody else. And so the result of that is that across the board, the different groups are no longer looking so different, and everybody is sort of working from home at similar rates. And that's really leveled the playing field, which is a great win for diversity.
Yeah, I wonder about this hybrid model approach because, I mean, anecdotally, it's always the question of you've emailed someone, you want to hear back today, but obviously Friday's not their day in, and that could be within a company or externally as well. Is there any research, Melissa, about what policy frameworks work best in this setting?
I don't think the research has touched on the policy side of things as much because it's still really early days in the whole, mass work from home experiment. So far, it's been sort of left to firms and workers to find the best approach. But what we really do know is that it's complex. It's still in the experimental phase. It's not a case of one size fits all or set and forget. And the best approach is going to be different for each organisation, different for each team, and is going to change over time. So definitely not going to land on a one size fits all approach with all of this.
The opposition industrial relations spokeswoman, Michaelia Cash, has said that rules aren't needed around working from home. She more or less says that employers and employees are more than capable of setting their own work from home arrangements in workplaces where it's possible to do so. Jessica, is she right that it's best to leave it to companies and employees to work it out for themselves? I mean, you'd think that two adults, commercial arrangement could probably come to a suitable and sensible agreement, but then again, it's not factoring in when things go bad, which is what industrial relations laws are presumably for.
Absolutely. I think she's right here in terms of, and we've seen this, we've seen the evidence of that. So working from home, it's really boosted in the last few years, but it's not a new concept. It's something that's developed over the last decade or so, and beyond that, but in higher rates. We know that increasingly enterprise agreements, which we know are agreements between an individual employer and their individual workplaces and a particular union, for instance, more and more of those enterprise agreements will have arrangements around working from home. So we know that in terms of that these issues are being dealt with at the workplace. I should mention as well, so in terms of caring responsibilities, and Andy started the segment talking about the Fair Work Commission, the award review, and the focus of that review really is caring. It's called the work and care stream. So we're talking here about how we can provide more flexibility for those with caring responsibilities. To the Senator's point there as well, in terms of the current framework, I'll just point your listeners to the existing flexible individual flexibility arrangements, protections that are already worked into the Fair Work Act. So we know currently under the National Employment Standards, which applies to all employees, not just award-covered ones, that if you're a parent or a carer of a school-aged child, you've got a disability, you're pregnant, you're aged 55 or older, you're experiencing family and domestic violence, or a whole range of other different, or mostly those, that you already have the right under the Fair Work Act for all employees to make a request of your employer to work flexibly. And a big part of that is working from home or reduced hours or different days. And this is a part of the Fair Work Act that's existed for a long time now. So this is certainly not a new concept, and there's certainly those protections in place already.
But if there are these number of cases regarding remote work going before the Fair Work Commission, wouldn't it be actually better to clarify the legislation? Is that what the Fair Work Commission is doing in this investigation?
So the Fair Work Commission only has jurisdiction to consider award terms. So they've got no ability to change the current law for, as I mentioned, as I set out before, for caring responsibilities in the Fair Work Act. So all they'll be doing is potentially inserting terms in modern awards that are in addition to those responsibilities and obligations of the Fair Work Act, which when we start doing that, we've got different layers. We know the workplace system already is quite complex. So we do have some concerns about, making things more complex for business.
Melissa, I mean, as we sort of assess the risks that, if the Fair Work Commission doesn't provide enough guidance of this, and I'm particularly conscious of employers that are listening to this and employees who want some clarity. What risks are they exposed to, do you believe?
Look, if it's about providing clarity, then I think that's a good thing. But as Jessica said, if it's adding to that regulatory burden, then that can really put a drag on things and make it really difficult for employers. And particularly when we're thinking about ways we can boost productivity growth in the economy. Now, our own research shows that employers are spending more and more time on regulation of this kind, and that means they've got less time to devote to building their businesses and innovation and all those things that we know are a key driver of productivity growth. So if it makes things simpler for business, then that's a win. But if it makes things more complex and more difficult, then that's a concern.
Well, we haven't even gotten into the weaponisation of this issue in the culture wars. Perhaps we'll leave that for others. Jessica Tinsley is the Industry Director of Workplace Relations at the Chamber of Commerce, and Melissa Wilson, Senior Economist with independent think tank CEDA. Good to have your perspectives. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having us.